Well, hello everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to the Rattlecast. We're the biggest freewheeling live streaming poetry podcast on the planet, in your ears and on your laptops. Our guest for episode number 325 is Jen Karetnick. She'll be with us in just a few minutes, but before we begin, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been a continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all this because we love poetry. I know you do too, so please do click on that like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell for notifications, leave reviews on iTunes or Spotify. Wherever you're listening to this, there's something you could do to help us out. That's all we ask. Click something to make more people experience the power of poetry. Now we're going to start out with a powerful poem by our Poets Respond poet this week. And it was a really, emotionally fraught, impactful week for news, first of all. And we had a lot of poems coming in about this topic. And the poem we chose this week was by Annalise Parody. Hey, Annalise, how you doing?
Hi, Tim. Thank you for having me. It's an honor, and I'm especially grateful to be here and be a part of the poetry community this week.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad that we could have you on. And it was one of those weeks where we knew pretty much we were going to have a poem about this event, which was, of course, the murder of a poet. And there were so many poems written about it, probably 200 or 300 submitted. And as is always the case, when there's a big event that happens, there's only so many poems that really dig deeper and find like another layer to think about underneath it. And that's what you managed to do with this poem. Can you tell us how you ended up entering and turning this into poetry?
Yeah, I actually had maybe 4 or 5 poems in the same document that I had written before I started this poem. And those were pieces that were cathartic for me to write, but didn't feel like they maybe were going somewhere new. And I was left with a feeling, sort of like a sticky feeling of frustration. It's really hard to write a poem elegizing someone when I would pick Renee being alive over 1,000 of the excellent poems I've read this week. Just choosing her poet's breath to still be here with us, or the piddly brook of her soul, as she called it in her poem.
Yeah. And so, of course, the story was the shooting of Renee Good, who was a poet in Minnesota by ICE, which happened, I believe it was Thursday. And, so many poems have come out, just on social media in the time since, and so many poems too. And let's hear this one, though, where you went with it.
Yes, one moment, sorry. A poet is murdered by the state, and I'm sick of the elegies the rest of us feel compelled to write. Every martyr poem crowned by the same thorns. Inside, death grows a green nose so we can point at it and laugh. Marches about, licks the trigger of every gun. Here in our stanzas, death is ugly and eager, but I know death could be so much more. I search for Renee, try to find her fingers that sprouted spiders, 8-legged words that could crawl to your collarbone and craft a home. Instead, a woman with the last name Good becomes a symbol for terrible. America has even more reason to mistrust death, who's at her best when she's neither the eye of the hurricane nor the whole storm. Death shouldn't be allowed to swallow the story of a life, to hold it in her hot stomach. Death is just the way that it ends.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for sharing that. It is a powerful poem and something to think about. That one line toward the end, death shouldn't be allowed to swallow the story of a life, and how true that happens in these kind of events all the time, where we see the video, and so many people, millions and millions of people have seen this video of the last few minutes of a life, but then how little we actually know about it. So thanks so much for sharing that, Annalise. It was a great addition to literature right now.
Thank you so much, Tim.
Yeah, so that was Annalise Parody. Of course, that was Poets Respond poem for this week. If you have a poem about current events, any week, anything that's happening right now, write a poem about it and submit it by Friday night at midnight, and then we'll publish at least one every Sunday. That's how Poets Respond has been going for about, 15 years or so. And if you want to get those poems by email, go to rattle.com. At the very bottom, you'll find the sign up for our newsletter link. Just type in your email address. You'll get our daily poem by email every morning at about 5:30 a.m. So do that if you don't yet. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our main guest. So sit tight, and we'll be right back with a whole lot more poetry. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. Like I said, today's guest is Jen Karetnick, poet, writer, food traveler, journalist, dining critic, and educator. Jen Karetnick is the author and co-author of 22 books, 7 of which are full-length poetry collections, including Organ Language, Domiciliary, and Inheritance with a High Error Rate, which we have in print right here, winner of the 2022 Cider Review Press Book Award. She's co-founder, co-curator of the nonprofit organization SWWIM, which is supporting women writers in Miami, which offers residencies and a reading series for women identifying poets, and managing editor of its publishing arm, the daily online literary journal SWWIM Every Day. And you can find more at our website, J Karetnick. That's JKARETNICK.com. Here she is, Jen Karetnick. Hey, Jen, it's great to see you.
Hey, Tim. It is great to be here. It really is an honor. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, we published you in Poet Respond, speaking of Poet Respond, several years ago. And then it was Katie who saw you doing a reading with, I think it was Carrie Gunter Seymour.
Yes.
And she said, Jen is an amazing poet. We got to have her on the Rattlecast at some point. So I reached out, and it's great to have you here. I'm looking forward to it, looking into what you've done. It's just so much. You're a prolific writer. It's really impressive. So I'm looking forward to talking about all that.
Yeah, we have a lot of work under our belt, I guess. But I've been a professional journalist and poet at the same time. Back in the days when people told me you couldn't do that. And I was like, what do you mean you can't do that? Like, never tell someone you can't do something, because then they're going to go do it.
Well, do you want to start out? We're going to read from the older book first, Inheritance with a High Error Rate. Do you want to start out reading a poem from that book?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. This book was written on the last... during the last few years, I lived on a mango plantation, or the last acre of a mango plantation that we took care of. So half the year we were mango farmers. And then we decided that we got too old to take care of 14 trees because mangoes are really, really heavy. And we decided to sell it. And this was before the pandemic. So it took a while for us to be able to find a place we wanted to go, sell the mango house, and still remain in the area. We actually only wound up moving a mile away. But over those 20 years, we saw a lot of what's in this poem, which is climate change. This is called I Live at Ground Zero of the Climate Exodus, or How to Sell a Waterfront Home in Miami. With every king tide, the land loosens a little more around me, a floral kaftan to wear after surgery. Underground, the concrete walls of the houses spall, crackling like cellophane. The iguanas seem strong now, flexing their tails and shitting in pools with typical arrogance, far more equipped to survive than I am. But one day they will be cut off from the mainland, the distances too far to swim, the woolly mammoths of the millennial generation. Left to inbreed, their genes will become asteroids of their ancestors' making. It's too late for the maybe someday, the if or when day. Even the least honest realtors acknowledge where not to buy if you're local, know which communities are a harder sell. These they peddle to half-timers who can afford to have no wind insurance or worry, who private jet away from storms into the peace of other primary residences, where peacocks don't stalk the roads, chevroned by dried saline, attracted to the fish and frogs left behind when the water recedes like a hairline, leaving its prickly evidence of once was. This is how it is to long for something I haven't even left yet, steeped in nostalgia like old tea leaves that have barely any hue and even less future to give, like the beaches here, bony under mounds of the sargassum smothering the sea turtles, the crabs and lobsters. Oh, those static interstitial species. How they too can't obey the logic to go when the draw is so magnetic to stay. Still, I plug the address of every available house into the FEMA Flood Map Service Center, bury St. Joseph upside down near the for sale sign, pray that his discomfort in the dark will lead me to some kind of light. Homes built on natural oolite ridges or manufactured rises, complete with impact windows and hurricane-proof doors. And every day, watch the statue's feet get washed by the mother who is all of our toxic mothers, protrude a little more from the eroding ground, leaning inland, 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 where we will both be reborn as eventuality.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So that was I Live at Ground Zero of the Climate Exodus, or How to Sell a Waterfront Home in Miami. You already touched on just a little bit, your background in journalism and poetry, and having a mango farm. It's such a really interesting array of things for a poet to be doing. Can you tell us just about your background and how, when did you first start writing poetry, and when did that come into the picture, and how did the other things start to swirl around that too?
I first started writing in college. I had the good fortune of winding up in Deborah Diggs' beginning poetry workshop. I thought, I'm going to be a novelist, I'm going to be a fiction writer, and all those classes were taken by upperclassmen. So I wound up in this beginning poetry workshop, and I was just, dreadful, like the worst poet there. I didn't want to be there. And then something happened. She was a magical mentor. And something happened midway through where I fell in love with poetry. And that became what I wanted to do. But after I got my MFA and I moved to Miami to join my husband, who was in medical school at the time, I was like, what am I supposed to do here? Nobody was a professional poet. You don't do that stuff to make money. So I wound up applying for a job in the newspaper that said, do you have the stomach for this job? And it was for a food critic for a dining. Back when we had newspapers, like real printed words. And I had worked in restaurants since I had been like 16 years old. And I thought, I'm just going to try. And I got the job, which was like also sort of astonishing because I'd never written an article before in my life. But I knew the workings of restaurants. I knew the ins and outs and why food might arrive at your table cold. And, I knew how to serve. And I've been a cook in a restaurant. I've been a food runner. I've cut cheese. I've worked in bakeries. So I have a really good background in food. And I think that's what sold the editor at the time. And also the fact that I had a partner to dine out with, which a lot of people preceding me would have trouble finding friends to go out. He actually, and this is so illegal, he brought my husband in to interview with me to make sure that he was a good eater.
Oh, wow.
This was, many years ago, 1992.
Yeah.
So I wound up working in food, which is, a great job to have.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. And we had a really fun issue over the summer on food poems with an interview with Ruth Reichel, too, who, has so much poetry at the heart of what she does. So just right off the bat, I'm wondering if the poetry experience you already had came into play for writing about food, because the two are really similar in a lot of interesting ways.
Absolutely. And I'm not the only one. There are a number of poets who are also food writers or critics or I guess influencers would be more the term now, but this was not, I wouldn't say it was common, but I certainly wasn't the only one who was working in food and also working in poetry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. And so one of the things I was wondering, if you writing poems and writing about food, is there a similarity in that, in the way that you generate thoughts? Because it does, so much of it is description and so much is visceral. And there's a way to, when you're tasting, you're on the first pass, you're like, what is this? And then on the second, you're like, what are the notes? And then what does it mean finally, builds in that direction. Does that have a lot to do with your writing process? They just seem so intertwined to me.
They are, because it's all show and don't tell. I mean, in journalism, there has to be some element of telling, like, which always frustrated me, because here's like how much it cost and here's what, how you get to the restaurant. But it's really trying to show the dishes to the public. And now it's much easier because you go on TikTok and everyone's taking a big hamburger and going, and, you couldn't do that back then. You had to make people taste it with their eyes. And that's the same with poetry. You want to convey whatever it is you want to convey, an emotion, a scenario, a narrative, a lyric. But you have to show it. You can't just say, are you getting me? Are you like feeling this? So it uses a lot of those same mental muscles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so much is that way. Storytelling too. If you look at Ruth's books, so much is about like the stories behind the food or around the table that come up. It's a storytelling. It's a certain avenue of storytelling, maybe. In poetry is the same way. I mean, we think about poems as like the music of speech and focusing on language. There's all the the critical elements that we talk about so often of craft, but really it's a way of telling story too at the same time, just telling story at a different angle, right?
Right. It's the story of taste, and it's the story of music, and both of those things are maybe a little difficult to describe if you're just talking about it esoterically. But when you get right down into it, you see a lot of people say things like, I see just one sense working in your poem. Where are your other four senses? And that's kind of the same thing with food writing. You can describe taste a lot, but where is the tactileness of the dish? Where is the mouthfeel? Where is the nose of it? So you're really trying to bring in all of that experience the same way you want to bring in all of your senses to a poem, not just seeing.
Yeah. Well, really well said. Let's hear another poem from this book. And again, the book is Inheritance with a High Error Rate. Next up, you had My Hairstylist is a Man Who Loves the Shape of a Woman's.
Yeah, this is probably more a poem about how shallow Miami can be, but it's an interesting city and we love it. It's changing all the time. Okay, my hairstylist is a man who loves the shape of a woman's skull. Its petite cliffs and canyons that he hikes with his agile fingers, the dips and curves in the road of a scalp that he reads like a triptych. Otherwise indifferent, his Gucci model face set as if for a permanent advertisement. He converses only with the Italian men whose hair he trims in between foiling and painting away my personality, turning me as platinum and beach wave as every other woman in Miami. He envisions me even less visibly than I view myself, I think, until we go to the sink and I lean back in the chair while he rocks and cradles my head in his palms, size of saucers, supporting my occipital bone like a lizard caught to take outside, turning me this way and that under the faucet, exploring the only part of my aging body that interests him, my drenched and gleaming skull, showing off its faulty crevices and divots like a landscape, or perhaps an archaeological excavation, ancient and revelatory, perpetually in danger of collapse.
Yeah, that was My Hairstylist is a Man Who Loves the Shape of a Woman's. And that was from Inheritance with a High Error Rate, the most recent book out by Jen Karetnick. So how did this book in particular, this was, I guess if I'm counting right, it would have been your fourth book of poetry.
I think it's my fifth full-length collection,
Okay.
and then it would have been, I don't know, I had 5 or 6 chapbooks. This one I wrote over several years. It had a strange journey to publication. It was accepted in 2019 by another press, and they never published it. And
really?
they just sort of ghosted me after a while. And I know I'm not the only one to have this experience, but it was deeply unsettling after the pandemic to be completely ghosted. Like, what happened? I know you didn't succumb to COVID. I know, like, you're still putting out books. So eventually I just parted ways with them and started sending it out again, and it won a prize. And I was like, wow, okay, maybe this was meant to be. But it's really about the last few years I spent picking mangoes and watching my kids graduate from high school and facing the thought of the empty nest and knowing that we really needed to sell the place, but I really didn't want to. It's a really beautiful acre of land right in the middle of like urban Miami. And the only flaw that it has is that it's covered with mango trees, and you just can't ignore mangoes. When they're ripe, they fall. And when they fall, they rot if you don't pick them up. And when they rot, they stink. So mango, as romantic as it seems, and it was romantic for us for like 15 years. The last 5 years, kind of hellish. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's farming.
Yeah.
It's just fun, you know?
Yeah. And
So
we
that's
touched,
it.
yeah. One of the poems, the first poem we read touched on climate change, of course. And I'm wondering, like, how much did you experience that firsthand? Could you see the difference over those 15 years from the beginning to the end?
Yeah, we were there starting in 1990, and we left almost in 2020. So is that right? No, 2000 is when we moved in. We were there for like 20 years. And from the very beginning, even though I knew nothing about mangoes, I would take a picture of the first ripe mango of the season and put it on Facebook. And I realized after like 10 or 15 years that those dates were constantly changing. They were moving closer and closer to April when they should have been May or June. And I was like, the climate was definitely warming up. We weren't having as many cold fronts. The mango trees were blooming earlier and earlier every year. And now that I have all of these historic artifacts of the harvests, I can see that it's really true. There were a couple of times when they would go back to normal, but in general, they marched forward.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting to experience it firsthand. And were there any things that it made you change the way you did? I mean, I don't know. I've never heard of even a mango farm. It's hard to imagine what it's like. Was it already a farm when you bought it? And how much work went into cultivating it? I'm really curious about that. But did the climate changes change anything about the way you ran that farm?
So mangoes sort of establish themselves, and they don't require a lot of caretaking in between trimming and maybe fertilizing a little bit. They require nitrogen that's often missing or too much in the soil. Sometimes you have to fix the soil. We came into this place. These mango groves were all over Miami, and they were established in the 1930s. So this was pretty historic. This was the last acre left of the actual grove that had been planted in what is now called Miami Shores. It was also, interestingly enough, which is something I'm writing about right now, Julia Tuttle, who's the founder of Miami, her father lived on that land also, and so did the postmaster, the first postmaster of Miami. So the land has a lot of history in it aside from mangoes. But mangoes and coconuts and pineapples were the way that in the early 1900s and right up until like the 50s, 60s, people made their money. So a lot of that had disappeared into subdivisions, but this parcel remained. And the guy who had the house before us cut down, kills me to say it, cut down 7 of those mature trees and built like I don't know, the garage or an addition or something. It's a very interesting house. It started as a Sears house, which is a prefabricated house that's sent to you in like one room. And it was the mango picker's cottage. And then over the years, owners added on. So it wound up to be this, like, I don't know, kind of put together house of many different parts. But the mango trees remained, many of them. And they were about 3 stories high because a lot of times they weren't maintained correctly. So really the most work would come during harvest. Otherwise, we had this like beautiful shade and our house was like 10 degrees cooler than everyone else's. But then starting around May, you would start getting mangoes. And it would start with 1, and then it would be 10, and then it would be 100, and then it would be 1,000. And you would be like, oh my God, what am I going to do with all of these mangoes? So I befriended a lot of chefs. But, in heavy seasons, I remember one year my husband and I just went around at night and we left bags of mangoes at restaurant back doors just to get rid of them because we just couldn't process them enough.
Yeah.
And then in the later years, I wound up making a lot of jams and salsas and selling them at farmers markets. And my kids have that older memory of the house always smelling like cooking mango, and they hated it. And they were like, thank God we don't have to deal with that anymore.
Well, that's also interesting. Let's hear another poem, and I think this has to do with the house. The foundation of the number 6 is family and a harmonious home.
Yeah, this one is about some of that, and also about a friend of mine who was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer at 51, and it was the same time that Alex Trebek was diagnosed. And she lived 3 months and he lived 3 years. So it's also sort of about that discrepancy that money can buy you, which is time. The foundation of the number 6 is family and a harmonious home for Jill Lane. The day after a friend died at 51, I found 15 bees next to the laundry room, each one a comma marking the mortal clauses of sentences, lightened husks scratching with every turn of the ceiling fan's staticky messages on the tile the aging dogs have stained with their need. I didn't know how they had gotten in, why the need to expire en masse next to the carpet that we'd found backpacking in Morocco, where we'd slept on tile. Near the French doors, I noticed a lone one, not dead, but dying, wings still trying to turn, and another in the orchid window, their sentences easy enough to scan, bodies like tulip bulbs sentenced to wintering. My friend hadn't received what she needed, leaving before the season had a chance to air and turn, short of the time the doctors guessed after they found the tumors deep in that number-shaped gland, one of the organs nobody can live without, the center Jenga tile. Bees can invade a wall the same way, build tiles until the space is owned wholly, unseen by comb. Sentence a hive to death or attempt a rescue. Choose the one in this case to be the most effective for the host's needs, but it will become a collage regardless, a found poem of encaustic, zipped up parts. Please turn up the sounds of the universe. Override whose turn it isn't. The rich man who reads answers from digital tiles, whose exact same stage 4 diagnosis is accurately finding the question, what is remission? This whole sentence, 9%, is a more terse construction. That's the need to know she never told most of her friends, just the 1 or 2 who understood such minority odds weren't the ones ever going to be in her favor for survival. Now we slow turn the Shiva trays, past the pastrami, ask her children who needs the spicy brown mustard to spread on rye stacked like tiles. It lay in wait for her, this pre-wrapped delicatessen sentence. In the smoke of our ancestors' genes is how we will all be found, though sorrows of this nature seem far too deep to probe. One apiarist finally finds the hive. He guesstimates it's 6 pounds, turns his ear to the tiles, listens to the bees chew and chew these sentences.
Yeah, that was a sestina.
It
The
was, yeah.
foundation of the number 6 is family and harmonious home from, once again, the book Inheritance with a High Error Rate by Jen Karetnick. And one of the things that's interesting with your work, we've seen these titles already. I think we should talk a little bit more about craft. And you have a lot, you deploy long information-laden titles very often. It's one of the things I noticed reading these poems. So can you talk a little bit about how you go about that, choosing the title? Is it, for most people, I think the title comes last. You kind of use, is that how you work with poems? And why do you choose the titles that you do?
Titles to me are like super interesting and possibly the best part of the poem. But it's funny that you mentioned that, because for my next book, I tried to use very short titles because I noticed that I overuse this, like this device a lot. But a lot of times I will write the first sentence or line and it becomes the title. I always, and even in my journalism too, I always start at the beginning and end at the end. And I can't seem to shake that up no matter what I do. So even with poetry, when, you don't really know where it's going, I start with a title. I start with like a line that has struck me. Sometimes it becomes the title, sometimes it stays the first line. But I do use running titles a lot, and I do try to give maybe some more information than you might not find in the poem. But again, I think I've overused that device. So now I'm like, okay. And my editor for the next book was like, maybe you don't need so many commas. Maybe you don't need so many running titles. And, she was right.
Well, so how does that come into play? The use of journalistic structures. I remember I did write a series of articles for the Press Enterprise newspaper for years in the Los Angeles area, and they would get mad at me because I didn't use the funnel, structure often enough. And so, starting out with a general and then getting more and more detailed as you go, because I liked more poetic. I wanted to hit with a punch and then move around within it, and they kept not liking that. So, but there are structures for like engaging people's interest and then like sort of hooking them and then reeling them in or something like that are important for a writer. So is that something you think about when you're writing a poem? Is it that how you'll engage and sort of hook the audience?
I think that now comes sort of instinctually, but when I first started writing journalism, I didn't have any experience. I literally was trained on the job. And I was fortunate that one of my editors who worked with me a lot, his parents were poets. So he sort of understood the way I wrote intuitively. And he really taught me on the job, like literally week by week, through many drafts until I started to learn how to structure an article. I think that did have an effect on the way I write. Like the story, you don't want to bury the lead, but you do want to entice. And what we call that in poetry is the volta. You don't want to bury the lead and never reveal it, but you want to sort of draw people in and then turn it around, give them a little surprise maybe. So I think I was being trained without realizing it in how to write better poetry. But, those two editors, the one who hired me and the one I worked with very closely, I'm really indebted to them because I didn't go to graduate school for journalism. I didn't study journalism in undergrad. And so it was a very different world for me. And it taught me so much about writing, about space too, and about how you can't just use up all this space to say whatever you want. You have to be like word conscious and inch conscious. We don't have to do that anymore. But, you were well aware of how many inches you had in the newspaper to fill, and you couldn't overflow it. And that's just the same as a poem. Like you don't want it to be overly full. You want it to be very, very targeted. I was really lucky in my early career to have that kind of experience.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting to hear. And it is something I think more and more about the structure of poems rather than like line edits. It just feels, I think maybe it's doing the critique of the week that we do every Friday. But like having people understand what you're talking about first is the most important thing. by far, because so many poems just get lost in the weeds of what your imagination is sprouting, and then we have no idea how to engage with it. I think that's the big, but once you have sort of and I do say the journalistic questions, like it's the who, what, why, where, and when, we need to get some of that established so we know where we are, like in time and space. But then after that, it's always going somewhere. So it is like the arc, like the journey, having a volta. And, beyond that, it's like, poets playing with their quirks and the way they like language to sound and stuff. And it's all fun and variety. But like the bones of what matter are like getting a story out in a way that's intelligible and does something. And so often we don't. So it's really interesting to hear that, structure coming somewhat from that journalism on the job training that go into these poems. Yeah.
For sure. I will say that I also was very lucky to work for an alternative weekly newspaper. So it wasn't very corporate kind of journalism. It was more of a storytelling kind of journalism, the way we started to see coming out in the 70s and 80s. So that was helpful. I didn't have to be like, let me introduce you to this restaurant. Here it is. I could talk about a book that I'd been reading that week or a poem that had hit me, and then use the second paragraph to get into the meat of the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's the way that makes writing just general interesting to me. So it's great to read things like that. Let's hear another poem, and this is an evaporating villanelle, which is a cool form. We do have the invented forms issue coming up. The deadline is this Thursday, and I think, I don't know if you invented this evaporating a villanelle, but that's the kind of thing that could qualify, though. So I might as well mention it. Taking a villanelle and doing something unusual with it, and this one evaporates. So want to share that?
Yeah, I really love to play with form, to break it, to reverse it, to turn it upside down. And this one came about naturally. A lot of times I set out to invent a form, but this one happened on its own, and it started to evaporate on its own. Since then, I've written many of these, but this was the first, Evaporating Villanelle. And emotion number 2, which is in the title, emotion number 2 is grief. I think emotion number 1 is love. But there's like a chart somewhere. I don't remember where. This is also an ekphrastic poem after, I think it was a photograph by Walter Brown. So Evaporating Villanelle for emotion number 2. Grief arrives often into the middle of things, interjected like a comma that survives, woven into the saddle of a list chosen by Oxford for battle, twanging every accent in the soma. Grief arrives often into the middle and rarely softens, demagoguery that survives, woven into the sodden season, sharp-eyed, spry. Grief arrives, sudden, serrated knives, fabric frayed that survives, defended, amended. Grief arrives, that survives.
So that was Evaporating Villanelle for emotion number 2. Again, by Jen Karetnick, from her book, Inheritance with a High Error Rate. So one of the things we haven't talked about yet that you do, and I should say that's going to be the last poem from this book, and we're going to move on to the 2 books you have forthcoming. So when I say, Jen Karetnick is prolific, it's very true. And one of the things we haven't mentioned at all is SWWIM, which you co-founded. And that's one of those things, it's such an interesting acronym, the double letter there. And then I remember the first time I came across it being sort of fascinated by what it meant or what it was. And then it was some great poem I saw that was shared, I think, years ago. And then finding out it was a bigger organization and the SWWIM Every Day is like a part of it. So what can you tell us about what that is and how SWWIM came to be?
SWWIM is my baby and Catherine Esposito Prescott's baby. We met a long time ago at a Miami Book Fair reading that I was doing. And I was the only poet, of course, to have little kids in the audience. And she had one of her children in a sling on her chest. And she was sort of newer in town. So she came up to me afterwards and said, like, a woman poet reading and also a woman poet with children here. And I was like, and look at you, with your baby. And at the time, we had recognized that it was so rare for women to be included in readings, and even more rare for mothers to be included. These were the days when you had first books instead of children, and you denied yourself the right to have children so that you could advance in the academic scene. And neither one of us had wanted to do that. It's just not the way that our lives were going. And we vowed to each other at the time that we would do something about that someday. And it probably took another 10 or 12 years before, our kids were grown enough and us to be unattached enough and free enough to really do something about it. But in 2015, we started planning. And in 2016, SWWIM was born originally as a reading and residency series. So we were fortunate enough that the Betsy Hotel, which is a very philanthropic, arts-heavy hotel in Miami on the beach, was interested enough in us to offer us several residencies a year. They have what they call the writer's room, and they house writers, musicians, artists. I mean, the place is incredible with like the amount of art it contains year round. So just to get a couple of residencies, we're like, yay, we're on our way. And without the Betsy, I don't think SWWIM would have happened. So we started with just a few residencies a year and doing readings with the residents that would come, but also local poets. So we would pair like a national poet with a local poet, and that was all going great until like the next year we were like, are we doing enough? Are we really raising women's voices enough? So we decided to launch a poem a day series, all written by women identifying poets. And we had no idea how much work that would entail. And to this day, we are still like, well, let's do this and let's do that and let's become more and let's do more. And, I have to thank Catherine and all my swimsters that we brought on board. We have now 5 or 6 editors, and we have like 10 staff readers and people who really believe in this mission of raising women's voices so that it almost seems like parity can be achievable. Mm-hmm. And I think we've done a lot toward that. I'm not sure parity is here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's really fascinating. And then the Betsy Hotel keeps coming up. We have to visit it sometime. I mean, Katie's dad, Steve Dozier, has artwork right there right now, and he's there all the time. So I've seen many, many pictures.
You guys have to come down.
Yeah, we definitely do. But that's a fascinating story for how that came to be, and it's just amazing. The thought of doing a poem every day, like at Rattle, we don't even do a poem every day. We have 5 days a week we have new poems basically, but we had 2 we were pulling up from the archives, so we get a little bit of a break. Right. And a poem every day is tough. Like that's a lot of reading. So did you ever struggle? I mean, that it just seems like a lot of...
Did we ever struggle? Yes.
I mean, to find poems and to get through the reading and to, like, how far out do you have them scheduled for one thing? And it just seems daunting to have a new poem every day.
I think you sort of understand how much work goes into it, given how much you guys do too. We early on decided that we were both moms. Catherine had 3, I had 2. When we started SWWIM Every Day. And I was like, we could do a poem every day, and she's like, why don't we take weekends off? That's probably a good idea. And weekends is really still the time that I read. I think I read poems every day, read submissions every day. But weekends is when I assign poems out to the staff readers. And so weekends became really important in that not publishing time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it is a ton of work, but it's work that I just absolutely love. I enjoy it so much. I can't see my life without it. We added recordings. You're always trying to make it more accessible because, we started this from our pockets, kind of like you guys. We are just, self-funded. We became a 501c3 a few years ago, and that's great. But, we still have a long way to go to be like, I don't know, in the black. Mm-hmm. We're just getting there. We're just starting to get there. But it's just such a wonderful organization of sisterhood. And if something happens in your life, and of course we've had several instances where one of us has a family emergency, or we have, kids who are sick or parents who are ill. We have, what everybody else has. There's always someone to jump into your place and help out. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's really important, that we're just like, we're bonded enough to know when the other one needs help and not let things slide. So we're always trying.
Yeah, well, that sounds great, and really is impressive. All the things that SWWIM does, and it just, I mean, we already started out talking about how prolific you are with, writing, articles, writing books, food books, writing poetry books. How do you go about balancing and like switching gears between all the different things that you do? Is there you just as a writer, are there certain times you carve out during the day? Do you write as you go? Like, how do you balance and juggle so many things and manage to keep having enough books come out where you have two coming out this year in poetry?
Well, that was lucky. That was just like it happened that way. I am prolific, but I think it's because I had a daily practice of being a full-time freelance writer. More writing begets more writing. It's just you get into the habit. But when that crash happened in 2008, I went back to teaching full time. So I was writing freelance journalism, teaching full time, raising two kids. And that's when my writing poetry really like fell off and took a hit until I figured out how to make the kids write at school at the same time I would write. So I think that was a big turning point of like learning how to write in community, which I had never done before. When I went to get my MFAs, they were very competitive. They were very critical and harsh experiences that I didn't necessarily enjoy. I enjoyed my second one more than my first. But now they're like big, I don't know what they are like now. I hear that there are gentler, kindler ways of doing workshop. But my first real experience of writing in community was with my students. Who were anywhere from the ages of like 11 to 18. So I was, really fortunate to land a position where I could teach creative writing full time, but it was for 6th through 12th grade. Mm-hmm. So for 10 years, that's what I did in addition to all the other stuff. And I think it taught me a lot about how to make the most of my time, how to convince other people to make the most of their time. And in between yelling at students a lot and throwing them chocolate when they cried, we got a lot of poems done.
Well, that's great. I want to talk more about that, but let's stick a pin in it and read another poem, because I want to make sure we get through these two. We have a couple each from the two books that are coming out this fall. So do you want to start out with the first one you've got here? The Abecedarian,
sure. Yeah. So people think I'm crazy when I say this, and they're probably right. During the pandemic, I realized that I had like put all of the poems I had written into books and there were no more left. So I was like, what am I going to do? I didn't really have a theme. It was the pandemic, necessarily want to write about the pandemic, but it was informing everything you did. So I challenged myself to write 26 Abecedarians and 26 beautiful outlaws, one for each letter of the alphabet. And this one is for F. But I started to get bored writing the Abecedarians, so I started layering other forms on top of them. They'd become ghazals also, or terza-rima, or this one, which is a cento. So I pulled all of these lines from books that I'd been reading that were published in 2020. So it's an Abecedarian, but also a cento. And I won't give you all the citations, but because there are a lot, 26 of them, but each line is from someone else's book. This is called Future Humans Won't See This, an Abecedarian cento for 2020. As for her children, she has already let them go. Broken shells flecked in gold. Could they be poppies? Some bright blurred orange flames draped in black crepe, knowing that everything she'd done had brought her to this. Forever, how it could fill the hand, the smallest green heron in the nest. In the stillness, home is a prison made of gingerbread, moving through it like wind in the dark, alive. The giant jolt. New words for solace, one of which is knifed. Death is everywhere and pretends to be life. Truth seems ancient, surrounded by moisture, where loneliness languishes in narrow beds. Down here, the eye is its own lantern, no answer from its flat gray face, pounding on the door she never used to lock. Quiet as knives on the spring punch street, The repetitor leads her through, spirit sparkling in communion and discipline. Every theory lingers in the cavities. Eventually, the undoing will cease, up there in a vacuum littered with satellites for seeing the whole world, wars and all. Aligned in a miniature xylophone, the failures, the losses, the broken path. Yes, it was splendid. That echo and echo. Compost onion skins, zucchini stumps, damp ribbons of peeled carrot.
Yeah, that's good. An abecedary and cento. That's not something you see every day. It must have been hard to find, the Z and the X lines. You had to hunt through poetry books, finding any lines that start with Z or X.
J is also really hard. And Q.
Yeah, definitely.
After you write your 15th or 16th abecedary, and you're like, oh shit. I think I've used all the Z words.
Yeah, that's a problem. So that was Future Humans Won't See This, an abecedary and cento for 2020 from Domiciliary. Am I saying that right? Domiciliary?
Yeah. Okay. Which just basically means home. Since we were all home. There's a lot of references to the pandemic in it, but it really does revolve around sort of being stuck in your home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of writing in community, like you said. And one of the things, I guess the theme of this discussion is balance. But one of the things that's always a struggle, as an editor and trying to build a community is balancing sort of like quality with positivity, you might be able to say. You want to encourage people to write great poems that are, timeless and will be remembered, but you also just want to encourage people to write at the same time. And so there's this dual paths that in the one sort of takes away from the other, and it's a difficult line actually to navigate. And it seems like you do that really well with SWWIM. So I just wondering what your thoughts are on that and how you do write within a community and keep the quality high at the same time.
Well, we definitely encourage each other. I think the writing and community really reached a peak during the pandemic when we were all sort of locked in, but able to access other worlds through Zoom, which was just such a revelation in a lot of ways. Since it was a newer technology and not many people were using it, we all came together to write. I have a larger poetry group called the Poetas, which are a lot of my swimsters, but then another additional 5 or 6 women from Miami area. It's funny how that's sort of fallen off now that we're all back in the world and doing what we do and working. But I know that most of my friends now have their own poetry communities and they hold them really sacred. And I seem to have gone backwards after writing in community for a long time with students. I'm now really happy to write alone. Mm-hmm. But I'm also happy to offer, workshops. And I love especially doing master classes with people who are really interested in learning about form. And it really, really is like the rush I used to get from teaching, which was a special kind of magic that is unreplicated. And I know teachers will agree with me everywhere. There is no harder job than teaching. It doesn't matter what level you're teaching. It is a very giving job that really drains you. But at the same time, when it goes well, it really inspires you personally. And you come out of it and go well, now I got to write my own poem. Mm-hmm. So there's that happens. And then there's the weariness that happens. And you have to understand that it doesn't matter what job you do, fatigue happens. Mm-hmm. So, there are a lot of poets who are I'm going to write every day, no matter what. I don't really do that anymore. I write when the poem comes, but I think about it a lot in my head before that happens. And it's a way of writing, but it's not on the page. Mm-hmm. So right now, I want to write a poem about a machete. I'm thinking about it at night. So I'm having bad dreams about really big knives. But every night before I go to bed, I'm running over lines in my head that could possibly be in this poem. One day it's going to pop out. Well, I try not to punish myself, but the bad dreams will happen if you're thinking about
it. Definitely comes along with that. Yeah. Well, that's an interesting. Do So are you able to hold the lines? I think I think all of us, think of some lines in the car, and then by the time we get there, we forget. Do you have a trouble with that, or do you manage to keep the stuff?
Absolutely, of course. And also the waking up in the middle of the night and writing it down and thinking it's the best thing ever, and you read it the next morning, you're like, what the hell was that? Like, what were you dreaming? What were you thinking? But sometimes, yes, I can hold the lines. I repeat them over and over again, or at least the beginning line, which again often becomes the title. And I think my subconscious does a lot of work at night.
Yeah. I think that's it's the stuff of dreams, poetry, and so that's the place where they're generated. Yeah, I should say at this point, if you're enjoying the conversation with Jen, please do click the like button if you haven't yet. It always helps. We always get twice as many people watching live as have clicked like at this point, and if I remind you, more people do. So that helps. Also, if you have any questions for Jen, leave them in the chat window, especially YouTube. I'll look at the other places a little bit maybe, but go to YouTube, leave a question, put it all in bold so I can see a big word, not bold, but all caps, questions, so I can see it as I'm scrolling through all the comments, and I'll pass anything along. Let's hear the next poem, Duck, Jen, which is a beautiful outlaw. And I've never heard this form before either. So tell us what that is first. I noticed some of the comments said that they hadn't heard of it. It was new to Laura B. So, yeah.
So a beautiful outlaw is like I don't know if you're familiar with the Oulipo poets. So in the 60s and 70s, this French group of surrealist poets started putting constraints on themselves, not necessarily writing like villanelles or sonnets, but saying you can't use the letter R in this poem, or you can't use a noun, or you can't use a verb. So it's like a form of surrealism, but I use it in a very realistic way. And a beautiful outlaw, the title corresponds to each stanza. So for instance, Duck, in the first stanza, you cannot use the word D, but you have to use every other letter of the alphabet. In the second stanza, you can't use the letter U, but you have to use every other letter of the alphabet, which is really difficult when you have to use a Q, especially in English, right?
Yeah.
So in the third stanza, you can't use C. In the fourth stanza, you can't use K. So, when I thought about challenging myself to write 26 abecedarian and beautiful outlaws for the letters of the alphabet, it never occurred to me that I was going to have trouble with like Q or Z. So it became really difficult toward the end to get that. And you'll see that in this poem. You'll see the word that I use that has a Q, but no U.
Wow.
So I'll read it. I will also say this is a true story, and it came from the Nextdoor app, where you correspond with your neighbors and they tell you things, and you're like, are you an idiot? And the answer is yes. Everyone is an idiot, including me. Okay, Duck. Every time she passes the sewer, she hears sub-zero quacks. It's a muscovy, she believes, that went to jump from the gutter to the curb, but whose voice now extends from below sea level. Down there were the lost shekels and half-melted tranks and blood-clotted tampons. The text of it livid with worry. She can't enjoy the free-form jazz of her walks, imagining nuggets of fuzzy gamboge babies left jabbering lakeside somewhere in the purlieu, unsequestered as often are for the evening foxes. So she dials fire rescue to lift the grate, which they do, obliging as agave to offer sweetness, and find a male bullfrog, squat and jovial in the scuzz, performing his throaty jingles about sex.
Yeah, well, that's right. So there's 25 of the 26 of these.
25 of the letters in each stanza.
Yeah. Wow. In the book, how many of these did you do?
26.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a difficult exercise. Was it? I imagine it's like both at the one hand, maddening, and the other sort of invigorating to having that forced constraint. You pull your hair out, but then be happy. So, yeah, exactly.
But I don't know why I chose to drove myself so crazy. I like the COVID stuff wasn't crazy enough, But I think it helped me deal with that external stuff by focusing so internally. And, like I said, this is a true story. A woman called fire rescue to rescue a duck, and these ducks are invasive anyway. We have them everywhere. And they found a bullfrog instead. And she was like, I mean, these aren't puppies and kittens. We're talking about like invasive reptiles and feathered things that shouldn't be here. Are we supposed to, it's a question I always ask myself. It's like about the iguanas. Are we supposed to be that concerned about them? Or are we supposed to just hope that the world freezes and that they fall out of the trees?
Yeah. That mosquito question too, I mean, mosquitoes are life, but boy, would we be absolved of a lot if we got rid of those.
I just wrote a poem about a mosquito.
There you go. There's a question about these beautiful outlaws from Odd Writings, who's sort of our resident odd writer. We published one of his what is it called? It's forward and backward the same thing. Whatever that poem is.
Palindrome.
There you go. Yeah, that's the word. Anyway, he says, did she search for strategies for writing beautiful outlaw forms, and if so, where? So, were there any strategy advice you found anywhere?
So I did do a lot of research on the Oulipo poets. I find them fascinating. There's like one form that they use is called N+7. So every noun that's in a poem, you go 7 nouns in the dictionary ahead and replace it. I mean, the things that they came up with were like, I'd say I'm a formalist. As a formalist, I'm fascinated by the things that they thought of. So it's definitely following along in that vein. I would think like, how can I find another word that has Q, or how can I find another word that has Z? I will say Google was a huge help as a strategy. Words that have Z in them, words that have Q in them, but no U. I mean, I don't think I would have been able to do this without a little assistance. But my main strategy was using very short titles here. So it's really hard to write. And I did do a couple, like I have one poem called Bikini. It's about the Bikini Islands, but also the invention of the bikini. It's harder to do these longer words and match them to the poem because you have to go Bikini, 6 stanzas as opposed to 3. So a lot of the majority of those beautiful outlaws are called like gas or fire or duck or, some very short words. And that was one strategy I used. And another strategy was cheating a little bit. I have a poem called No, but in parentheses, so it's 2 stanzas, one without the N and one without the O. But in parentheses, it's like, no, parentheses, is a word that a dog hears but ignores. So I did cheat a little bit. Cheating's the name of the game in formalism, right?
Well, definitely. Yeah, that's half the fun.
Yeah.
So let's see. So let's move on to the other new book that's coming out. And this one in September, Organ Language. And what can you tell us about that? A completely different, by the look of the 2 poems you sent, a completely different book.
Completely.
What can you tell us about that as we look forward to it?
I noticed alongside, I tend to write 2 books at one time. I never did this when I was younger. I would write enough poems and say, this is a book. But as I got older, I noticed that I would write along certain themes and I would start aligning them and pushing them to the side and saying, this is going to go in this book. This is going to go in that book. And this is the reason why I have 2 books coming out at the same time. My dad is in heart failure. My son donated a living kidney to his childhood friend. And I have my own like invisible illnesses that are kidney and heart related. And I noticed that all of these poems were sort of moving in a direction together. And I started reading a lot about organs and how they talk to each other. And it's really a very interesting way that the body works. So after my son donated his kidney, his friend, who is now in law school and doing super well, likes food he didn't like before, has sort of a different experience with life. And they say that donated organs do that. So my son always has liked really rare steak. This guy now likes really rare steak. And he's like, I always thought it was disgusting before, but now I love it. And I'm like, well, you got the right kidney. What can I tell you? So I wrote this book, Organ Language, and it does revolve around this sort of loose narrative of my son donating his kidney. But it's all about both lighthearted and very serious ways that organs fail us and make us. And so it's serious, but it's also got some humor in it, which you might see in this poem. This one is called The Making of What's Left. And you'll hear a repetition, but it's not that obvious as like a sestina. Now that he is losing it, those handfuls of fine strands in his palm, like pocket lint, my son asks me to teach him to style his hair, how to use a brush to straighten the curls instead of flattening them, like the mounds of dough he learned to fry with scallions while traveling in Asia. Now that he's losing it, the 5-year girlfriend gone as if she had never been, 4-year college done, the 2-year job in Austin to begin, the dermatologist confirming the fine strands in his palm, like pocket lint, is male pattern balding, and that tests have revealed that autoimmune disease lies in wait, as it did for me at that age. My son asks me, teach me to style the cowlicks that warp his part, comma his forehead, the way my older brothers did, who is forever younger than me now. His hair a brush that grows straight into earth. My brother was my son's godfather, but even that didn't heal what was wrong between us. We were too much alike, from the hair that needed brushes to straighten, to the comorbidities we both had to track like animal scat through our blood. My son holds the hairdryer as if it is his ex-girlfriend. I teach him to style from a left part, the same side from where his kidney will be taken for his childhood friend undergoing dialysis. The fine strands in his body filtered as if for lint 3 times every week. Universal donor, my son is scanned, probed, screened, finding out how to value his imperfect body now that he is giving away a handful of it.
Yeah, so a powerful poem there. There's The Making of What's Left from Organ Language, another forthcoming book by Jen Karetnick. I wanted to ask one more thing before we get to the last poem. Just about, it feels like you have, I don't know, things that draw your attention and want you to write a poem. You mentioned, a machete being on your mind now. And I don't know where that comes to mind, why you'd want to write a poem about a machete. And the Bikini Islands and where that word came from, the origin of that is another example. It feels like you're drawn to certain things. Do you go out looking for them, or is it your life sort of gives you the things that you're interested in? Do you have any advice for, maybe it's like a writer's block type question, but it feels like you've got things you want to write about that you have a sort of a passion for, like this needs to be a poem. So how do you get to that place where you find something that needs to be a poem?
I think I read very widely, and I always have been a reader since I was a very little girl, since the world of books opened up to me. And I don't just read poetry, I read novels, nonfiction, memoirs, journals. I am reading every day. People think I'm texting on my phone or scrolling or whatever. I'm actually reading books. And it's a habit that has never left me. And I think it's for the best that it never did. I used to think I would never get married or want to be with a partner because I wouldn't be able to read as much as I liked. And fortunately for me, I found a guy who doesn't care how much time I spend alone and how much time I'm on my phone reading. I used to have 5,000 books. So when we moved, I had to give them mostly all of them away. And now I just have the books you see behind me are like some of my vintage cookbooks. I still have a vintage cookbook collection, and I kept my poetry books, but everything else, all the novels and stuff, I gave away. And after that experience of like bagging up 4,000 books and giving them away, he was just like, can you read on a Kindle or something? And I thought, you know what, you're right. We don't really need any more books in this house, but it's reading that gives me ideas, and it's reading other people that gives me impetus to write. And it's reading that makes me curious about other lives. So while I draw as much as I can from my own life and experiences, I'm also constantly doing a kind of research through just reading a novel. and becoming curious about what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's, the formation of AI or dinosaurs or even just going online and being on Nextdoor, which I have to say has given me like 3 or 4 poems because, wow, the stories that you hear are just like, this guy was digging up truffles next door. And I'm like, those aren't truffles. We live in Miami. Those are like root balls. Don't eat those.
Oh, that's great. Well, let's close out with one last poem. And again, this is from the other new book, Amazements.
This is actually the last poem I wrote for the book. And it came out of my friend, a swimster, my friend Kara Dad's workshop on tarot cards. And I really thought I wasn't going to get anything because a lot of people write poems about tarot cards and what they mean. And I was like, yeah, I've been reading tarot cards for a long time. I'm not going to really necessarily get a poem out of this. And I did. And that's to the testament of what a great teacher she is. She's also the current Miami-Dade Poet Laureate. So she's just a magical person. And she woke this up in me. So I have to give her credit for that. This is my new experiment with naming poems one word. It's called Amazements. My husband had arranged for the illusionist to visit the restaurant table ahead of time. A double nickel birthday gift for me, though he knows I distrust magic, the word born from religion and conflict between the ancient Greeks and Persian priests, the implications of it responsible for the executions of hundreds of thousands of women throughout the witch hunt centuries, the tricks that are designed to fool the intellect like willful denial. But aren't poets also something like conjurers? At least practitioners of metaphorical sorcery, the end results intended to be bewitchments. It's true, too, that every time I spread the tarot, I pull the magician with his rose of Sharon and lily of the valley, denoting cultivation and the manifestation of desire, a divination that I contemplate as I choose the ace of clubs from a deck to find its duplicate already sealed in an envelope in the mentalist's inner jacket pocket. As I pick a random phrase from an encyclopedia page and then hear it in my husband's voice, tinny inside my ear as if recorded, without him moving his lips. As I escape my own skepticism with the relief one feels after issuing an apology to a receptive audience and tasting the rare substance of atonement.
Yeah, well, that was Amazements from the forthcoming book by Jen Karetnick, Oregon Language. It's coming out in September. Jen, really wonderful getting to know you better and going through some of the many, many things that you do. It's fascinating how much you juggle, having all these books come out too that are so different and varied, and a really fun discussion about poetry. I appreciate you being here. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much. It was really great to be here. Yeah,
well, definitely my pleasure. Yes, once again, that was Jen Karetnick. You can find all of Jen's work, including the most recent book, the 2 forthcoming books, jkaretnick.com. That's jkaretnick.com. Find that. Find SWWIM too. Really wonderful events. If you're ever in the Miami area, definitely check out what they're doing. Visit whatever's going on at the Betsy too. That would be a wonderful thing to do. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our prompt lines. And the prompt for this week was to write a poem that explores something left behind. Include as many tactile details as possible. That was your prompt for this week. And we're also, I forgot to mention and tease at the top of the show, that we're going to reveal our prompt poet of the month. A brand new one for the month of December, the best prompt poem written all month out of the hundreds and hundreds of submissions. We'll be joined by them in just a little bit. Before we do, let me tell you how to join the Zoom if you would like to share a poem. And first thing you got to do is email your poem to promptlines@rattle.com. That's promptlines@rattle.com, all one word. Email your poem there so I can show it on the screen like I was for Jen's poems earlier. And then join the Zoom link, which I'm about to deploy on Facebook and YouTube. There you go for YouTube. On Twitter, I don't know how to post comments, so you're going to have to find YouTube, but find it there, join us, but only if you have a poem. And remember, it's a 1-page max for poems. We want a 3-page max too on camera, so if it's like long lines, it's a big prose kind of poem, make sure you get to it quick. Be mindful of everybody else waiting in line to share their poems, but we'd love to hear from you, and join us on that Zoom link. We'll be right back with a whole lot more poetry. And we're back. Thanks so much for your patience. I'm here with our creative editor.
Oh.
Prompt
Sounds
lines
like a cool title.
Editor. My wife, Katie Dozier.
The person who's cooking dinner tomorrow.
Dinner tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
What about tonight?
Tonight we're having leftover lasagna that you made.
Ah, yes.
Nice.
I'm looking forward to that. And the last gluten-free lasagna, too.
Yeah, I know, because I found out I don't actually have celiac and had a false test result. So
yeah,
yay
so
me.
6 months of gluten-free.
Yeah.
Completely unnecessary. Okay. Well,
Anyway.
It is good news, though. It was.
is.
Now you appreciate it all the more. Just like when we miss a week of the Rattlecast, everybody appreciates.
We like to
know?
think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed that interview with Jen. I think she's fascinating, and it makes me proud to be from Miami, if I can say that. I was born in Miami. So.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah, and definitely the food poems. And made me want to eat mango. And I don't know if you saw in the chat, but Shauna Vingo Sanders said that her husband brought her like a cut up mango. She was listening to it on with headphones.
Oh,
and you guys
really?
were talking about mangoes, and he just like materialized
The mind meld.
with this mango. And I think you made me a mango smoothie earlier, but I guess we knew mangoes were going to come into play
Yeah.
this
Okay.
episode, so not as interesting. But
Sweet
anyway.
smoothie, yeah. I wonder, maybe they could have been some of Jen's mangoes in that smoothie. With the freezing, the way things go in the fall. Anyway.
All right.
So we have, it's a special day of the month, where we have our prompt Poet of the Month.
Yeah. So first, before we reveal the winner, I want to say that I think this was the strongest month of poems in the time that I've been reading prompt poems. I was reading the poems in my office and calling out to Tim, and I was like, these poems are so good.
Well,
they're so good.
Well, even more than that, you were kept reading me poems.
Yeah, and I was like, I gotta read you this. I gotta read you this.
Okay, Katie, I gotta actually do my work.
I was like, just two more. Yeah. Yeah.
So it is, and we have, Katie always gives some recommendations for the print, which is why we get a bunch of prompt poems in there too. And there was like I don't know how many. It was a lot this month.
It is noteworthy to say that when you submit to the prompt lines, I am reading for normal print stuff too. So
Yep, exactly. And, some of the best poems come from here because it's the people who are like paying the most attention to become the best poets. And
especially from this month. Okay. Anyway, so that is all the more impressive, you could say, for our winning prompt poet of the month, who this month is our own Rachel Grieve.
Yeah, hey, Rachel.
Hey.
Hey.
Yeah, so glad you could make it.
Yeah. The Mondays are a little harder, so yeah.
Well, congratulations, Rachel. This poem, when I read it, I was really impressed and really enjoyed it on a whole, like, many different levels, which is, of course, what we're looking for when we're looking for great poetry. So do you want to go ahead and share it, and then first tell us the prompt that it's written for, and then share the poem?
Well, so it was for the prompt that was like, what did you learn about poems this year, and write a poem about it. But then after I wrote it, I looked at it and I was like, it kind of worked for the one the week before too, where you're in the kitchen and then you get interrupted. So I think things are just like rattling around in your brain and then they come out.
I'm sorry. I know I was going to say you're going to read the poem next, but I have to say it's so funny you said that because I completely assumed it was just the poem that interrupts itself in the kitchen. That was the Billy Collins based one. Looking forward to next week when he's going to be on. But so that's hilarious. I asked you that and I assumed I knew the answer and I was actually wrong. So anyway. All right. Now
it
we're
turned
ready
out
to
being
hear.
both. So. Okay. So this is called Writing Modern Poetry, or Don't Worry, He's Fine Now. The opening line should tell who we are and where. As in, is this poem happening in Cincinnati or outer space? Or are we in the kitchen where I'm chopping onions? And this female that appears in the next line should be clearly identified. Is she my mother? Often in poems, it is the mother. But this time, it's my niece running in to interrupt this particular meal prep indefinitely. Afterwards, a pair of paramedics will show up for my nephew, who's lying face down on the driveway like a chalk outline. They'll splint his arm, which currently resembles a noodle in terms of flexibility. But there's no blood, which is good because blood is a trope to avoid in poems unless there's a really good reason. But there is no blood, so there's no reason to include it here. The ambulance men leave, and I should let you know they will not be showing up again. We peel the splinted nephew off the pavement and drive him to the emergency room. Radius and ulna snapped. If a clown shows up at this point, the reason will need to be clarified. Is there a 1960s birthday party? Is there a circus in town? Maybe there's a serial killer on the loose, or someone is watching the movie Dumbo, which, like birthday party clowns, but for different reasons, has not aged well. A poem should make a few leaps, like that last one with the clown. My nephew, on Painkillers, talks about a clown named Lego My Ego, and how much he loves Jesus. He talks on the phone with his mother. Supposing that female who showed up earlier had been my mother, she might have hesitated to call the ambulance, afraid that it would cost, and then what would Dad say? What is Dad doing here anyway? This poem is getting crowded. It seems he's always showing up like this, even in my mirror. Sometimes I worry the resemblance is more than skin deep. That's a digression. Neither Mom nor Dad is here, and I'm the adult in the room. You'd think in my mid-40s I'd be used to it. Sometimes a poem can go on too long, but sometimes not long enough. Sometimes it misses its stride, the way a teenage boy might, gliding around the last corner, gracefully swing his leg over the frame of a bike while holding the tennis racket.
Yeah, that was great. I just love the humor in that voice. So it was, Katie was reading me that poem out loud from the
office, so I have to
door.
kind of scream the poem out.
But it was very entertaining,
Yeah.
and I loved all the twists and turns and self-referential details and that.
Yeah, I was also curious. This is like probably the nerdiest question I've ever asked on the Rattlecast. So to me, the end and the tennis racket, like obviously it's what happened to the speaker's nephew, on a literal level, but it also feels like a reference to me for how Billy Collins had that interplay with Frost and all of that, and Frost, playing tennis without a net, free verse type thing. And that's where I went. But I'm wondering if that is my own little journey on that poem, or if
that's just what he was actually holding. And my sister is so excited about this poem because she's like, I'm going to give it to his English teacher.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad he's doing fine now, and an excellent use of the "or" in the title. Like, you had to tell us at some point that he was okay, for sure.
Yeah, I know. I was like, if I don't tell people he's okay, they won't feel like good being like thinking it's a funny poem.
Right.
So,
yeah. It was so funny. It is like the kind of thing when, like, I don't know, my mom tells me something, she's like, don't worry, everything's fine, and then like goes into it, which is the way I talk to, I think, actually having said it out loud. So, but it is the way you wrote it, so postmodern that it really does feel like you're reading the reader's mind. And if, poetry is about communication, and that I just felt like we were actually having conversation where you were reading my mind as I was reading the submissions, and it was really exciting and funny, and at the same time, talking about a serious accident. So we really loved it.
All right. Well, I'm excited that you guys liked it so much. So
yeah, well, very cool. Yeah, thanks so much, Rachel. Great
Thanks.
poem. It'll be the poem of the day tomorrow. So once again, if you want to sign up, if you don't, make sure you get your daily poem by email by going to the bottom at rattle.com. Now, before we move on to the prompt lines, we're going to talk about how we're going to shift things up.
I thought we were going to read our poems.
Oh, we're going to read our poems first?
Or are we going to do, I don't know. I just thought, because I put it on the post-it. I'm proud. If that's okay. Okay. So we're just going to share our poems for the start of the prompt lines, and then we'll talk about the changes.
Okay. Well,
right.
What do you have for us then, Kate?
I have a poem.
Okay. So the prompt once again to remind you for this week was write a poem that explores something left behind. Include as many tactile details as possible.
Yes.
Okay.
So here we go. A little bit more serious from me this week. Abandon. The cloud painting I brushed on in the nursery now hangs on another's wall. At least for a moment, anyone can own the sky. But what about that old swing? The wooden seat gave way after days of too much sun followed by too much rain. The rope could only fray. Sometimes it takes unspooling to make it to the next day. I thread the needle, but remember, my daughters aren't upstairs, even though their teddy bears reach up to touch the air. Half mine, half not mine, and how holding my breath is almost enough to make me forget that swing was already a broken thing long before the seat got wet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, those trade-offs definitely are hard. And,
they are.
And the weird shifts in that house.
But it's also ridiculous because I would have gotten nothing done, and I needed to work desperately today if they'd been here. So there was that.
That is true.
But it
does,
is, yeah.
Yeah, working in fits and starts is one of the ways we go about it.
That is true. Well, I'm curious to see what you've
started. I didn't finish. I'm not going to share just the start.
But see, this is what you're going to say though. Then you left the poem behind.
I left
that was
the
poem
thing
behind.
I could have done that. Yeah, I could have.
Well, you just did.
Okay, nice, good job. Yeah. Well, I did. I started. I wrote 2/3 of a poem. I didn't get the end, so I'm not going to share.
You've left
we'll
behind.
Come back. Yeah,
you have.
We'll leave it.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking clever enough. So I didn't.
You're always thinking clever enough.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the changes to how we're doing the prompt lines.
Okay.
So thanks to everybody who took a moment to tell me, sort of their thought process on it. We really want at Rattle to continually inspire the best poetry and new poets and everyone to write, and also for us to write the best possible poems. So as our community has fortunately grown and grown, we've kind of reached the point in size where we thought we were ready to shift into something that allowed for all of that to be fostered even more. Mm-hmm. So as I put in the replies that I sent to the prompt lines submission, so if I do realize a lot of people already know this. I don't want them to think I don't know that. We are going to be starting next week. We're going to have the invited prompt lines. And so the way that is going to work is the prompt that I give out tonight, you will have until Sunday night to go ahead and submit that to the normal submittable category. And when you do, you'll notice there's a new box for you to check if you'd like to be considered to read during the curated invited prompt lines that in exactly a week. So that's how you'll indicate that. You can still go ahead and submit your poem. If you can't be here or don't want to be considered to read your poem, you can go ahead and do that, and you just wouldn't check the box. And then what I'll do is on Monday, I'll go ahead and pick, and I'm going to pick towards a time allowance and towards wanting a great diversity in all its forms, meaning poem length, poem type, newcomers, hopefully, veterans, and go ahead and pick that. And then I'll send you a message on Submittable if I'm going to ask you to join the invited prompt lines, and then you'll get the Zoom link that way.
Yeah. And so it's a way, the truth about it is we started out in this like really broad way of having open lines where they were completely open. Anybody could read anything from ever. And then we shifted it to, it has to be Poets Respond or the prompt, and then like just the prompt, and then like just a 1-page max, then just a 3 minutes in addition to the 1-page max. And it's just so fun and great, and so many people join that it's tough to wrangle it, and we can't shrink anything anymore. So now we're going to be able to have any length of poem too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's something I'm excited about.
And it's such an artificial box too, to say like, oh, the poems have to be one. I know it's affected.
We're still doing it for the other reading. So.
Yeah, well, still, but it affects the way people write poems in a way that
that's
sort of arbitrary.
Yeah, I feel almost like we're kind of starting to write towards the same poem in a way, which I mean, a lot of them are really great poems, but that would mean that you can submit a poem and possibly share it that's a long poem. Now, at the same time, your chances for reading on the invited prompt lines are still probably better if it's a shorter poem, because the odds of me fitting it into the time and everything is a little bit higher. But at the same time, I'm looking forward to hearing some longer poems. I know everybody thinks I don't like them, but I do. I do. I just, you got to earn every word, So that's really exciting about that. And then also, too, we want to reach the listeners who aren't the ones that are actively participating, much as we love our active participants, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other thing we think about, too, is that it's really intimidating.
And that's what we kept hearing. Yeah.
I mean, everybody, people email me privately all the time and message and say, and when newcomers come too, it's sort of like this big hurdle to overcome.
Yeah.
But I think it's much less if we said, hey, your poem's great. Why don't you come this week? And it becomes a special thing for that week. I think we get more people not feeling as nervous about it too.
Right. And I also know too, for the Monday time slot that's difficult for some people, maybe, once a month they could be in a position to, get it out of some engagement or something such that they could join and share a poem once a month, whereas they can't do it realistically every night. So that's the first part of the changes. And then for the second part, should we see if...
Oh, yeah. Is our new community host here. Let's see.
There he is.
Yeah.
Already up to his community hosting duties. So, hi, Dick.
Hey, Dick.
Hello. I am so excited for this community reading thing, because I think one of the things that Rattle has led the way in is building community, and I think this other way of having a convivial community of poets interested in honing their craft wherever they are has been a real gift. So one of the things that I'd really like to encourage people to do, and given the fact that you might have a month between the time you write the poem and read it, is to post your poem on Rattlecast prompts. I have gotten so much help on my poems there, but I notice lately that fewer folks are posting, and it's just a great place to get feedback. And you can ask for any kind of feedback you want, and you can say, I am faint of heart, so be gentle, or you can say, I am rugged and I want to hear whatever needs to be heard. But it's sort of like a second critique of the week workshop. And just this week, my poem Cat Layman chimed in and basically said my haiku sucked. She didn't say it quite like that. She just said it wasn't really up to the prose part of the poem, and she gave me some guidance. And so I really encourage people to use that as part of it. The other thing I wanted to share is that every month we will have a co-host, hopefully who has been a Rattlecast participant, and our first co-host will be Lexi Pell from Rattlecast 272, and she is a fabulous reader and listener to poems, and she'll bring a poem that has been curated on Rattle to discuss at the beginning, And I think it's going to be a great experience for all of us.
So in case
it will be limited to the 3-minute poems.
So we want to say that too. So in case anyone didn't see the email too, what we're talking about is, so Dick Westheimer will be our community host doing a monthly Prompt Lines community reading. And so we are going to have the stipulation over there that there is a 1-page max and a 3-minute limit, just so that Dick can get to everybody. He is volunteering his time to do this. So it's really nice. And I think it's going to be a wonderful space for the community. And it was Dick's idea to involve a co-host. And I think, going and reading your poems and sharing with Lexi Pell on January 25th is an amazing thing for people to get to do. So thank you so much for doing this. And I'm really excited for it to be a space too, especially too for newcomers, to not feel intimidated and join in reading your poem, because there's something that you can't learn about writing poetry unless you're reading it out loud, right? And that's a really big hurdle to I want to encourage people to get over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just want to explain to anybody who might not understand what's happening. So this community reading is going to be a Zoom only. So it's a closed thing. The people watching are the only ones who watch, and it's a community building event. So we're going to have Dick hosting this Zoom. I will send out the Zoom link with, frequently. So Katie with her replies will send it. And we'll have it in our poem of the day email, so people can join if they have a prompt poem. And you go to the Zoom, share what you've been writing that week, within the constraints, and be part of the community in a way that's a little bit less pressure filled. Because I think a lot of people, I do remember when the first time I was ever on live air on the radio, which is before the Rattlecast, and it made me really scared to do the Rattlecast. But I was being interviewed in KPFK studio, and I was just talking to the host. It was gonna be fine, and then the red light came on. It was like live, and I was like, and I'd done a taped show with them before,
and you don't get nervous.
But I know. But knowing that it was live, I was totally like I was really like petrified in like the literal sense. And there was like this. It felt like 8 years to me. There's like this, like, if you ever listen to that show, there's like this 4-second pause where I couldn't move. I was terrified of the live. And I understand a lot of people feel that way. So this is a little step toward sharing stuff live in public too.
I think that will be really great. And then another thing I want to stress too is that for the poets that are on the invited prompt lines, if you make it on 1 week, definitely submit the next week. We want it to be about, like I was saying, poem quality and diversity. If you end up reading every time in a month, then great for you. We all are just trying to cheer each other on, right? That's what we're doing in poetry. We're not in it for the fame or the money. We're just in it for the amazing poetry and the connection we can get. So hopefully these changes will allow that to happen even more.
Definitely. And I saw a question from Michelle Rosario in the chat. She said, is anybody welcome to attend? If you don't want to read, just want to listen. And the answer is yes. I think the Zoom limit has a 500 people max. So as long as we don't, that's the limit on our Zoom account. And I don't know if we can afford the big corporate account. So I think that would be, but I think that's a self-limited.
That is too. And I was once really intimidated to read for Tim. So Tim and I will not be at the community reading, so that it's a space for the community to go into without that kind of oversight. Like the principal, are you the principal? The principal's in the room, kind of, because Dick will be such an amazing host. And that's so wonderful that Lexi Pell is going to be there for the first one too. So, and we know you'll do an amazing job, Dick. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. A couple of things. Yes, we'd love to have folks join who are just in the audience, but also join if you've gotten to read 1 or 2 times or whatever. You have a poem that you haven't had a chance to read on the Rattlecast. Come read. And unlike Tim, I'm just a guy. There's no. I know how much it felt when I read on this space early on, that it felt like a performance for the editor of Rattle and not. And I think getting in this space will be a nice opportunity for folks to take the next step and then to read on Rattlecast.
Well, that's great. And then
and you're just a guy too, Tim, but people don't know it.
This is like a Notting Hill reference. Do you guys understand the line from this romantic comedy you're referring to? I'm just a
No.
girl standing in front of a boy. Like, what is it? Asking him to love me.
Aw.
That's what it is. That's what I feel like I'm doing with Rattle Community all the time. Anyway, we'll look forward to also, as at the beginning of the invited prompt lines, we're going to check in with you, Dick, every week too, so we can also encourage people to go to your community reading every month. So that'll be fun too.
And just to confirm, it is the last Sunday of every month, and the last Sunday of the month is the last day of the month, because this will give you an opportunity to revise poems after you've read them into the space. But please, post your poems on Rattlecast prompts. It's a great adjunct to this community.
Yeah, please do over on Facebook. I've loved watching that community thrive. And you're right. I mean, Dick Westermer getting to post your poems and having Kat Lehman, you know, basically a haiku god comment on your things. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, terrific.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks for volunteering to do this, Dick. And I'm really excited. I think it's the more ways we can build community, the better. I think it's a great way to do it while expanding as well at the same time. So,
great.
yeah.
And we'll remind folks every Rattlecast up until the first.
Yeah, we will. And by email, be on the website too at rattle.com/page/prompts, things like that too. So,
Well, that'll be a destination everyone's going to.
will. Rattles rolls right off the tongue.
That's impressive. I can't say / without picturing gymnastics. Anyway. All right. Well, we've got to hear your poem, though, Dick.
Okay, well, let's go for it. This is the one that Kat was generous enough to be a little bit pointed about. So we'll see if I actually got the message. It's entitled. It's rated high on my first ever. 15 years, 8 months, 22 days, 18 hours, and 42 minutes ago. I didn't leave my body behind when my heart stopped pumping, but time lay on the hospital bed, wilted, a lily blossom brown as the dry soil. I heard no sound other than nothing, saw no light other than the sun setting on some other day, other than yesterday when I walked in this place, was sent to this grayed out room. Remembering. When I pressed the button summoning help, they asked irate my pain. The last I heard were these words, "Oh shit, he's gone." It's not time, someone thought. Some hand pulled back the pendulum of the clock of me and let go. It hung there like a closed curtain. They pulled again and then once more. Tick. I was found by someone else. Tick. Who is me? Tick. Again. Leaving home with my wife. How far did you go? The nurse in brown scrubs had his warm hand on my chest. It was like a hen incubating her chicks. He asked again. He didn't believe I was back. Then, once again, alone. Wherever I go, I remain still, warmed by that hand.
I love the hen incubating her chicks image. I mean, you can really feel that. Way to get tactile with the prompt.
Gotta get tactile with the prompt.
Yeah, we should read the haiku too for everybody just listening. So, remembering leaving home with my wife alone. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Dick. A pleasure.
Yeah,
as
thanks
always.
for everything.
Yeah, and thank you for instructing me how to. So, is that how you should read these braided?
I think when you're reading them like to someone who can't see, I believe, like that they don't have the poem in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's the one thing with Hyben. A little confusing to read out loud.
They definitely.
I
are.
haven't mastered it yet.
Yeah, I wonder, like you could like break, like you could do some kind of gesture.
Break dance.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, so we'll figure it out. All right. Well, thanks, Dick.
Well, thank you all.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
As Dick Westheimer, our community host, with 15 years, 8 months, 22 days, 18 hours, and 42 minutes ago. Getting very precise with that one. Let's go to a familiar face.
Aww.
Who we haven't seen in a long time, smiling at us. It is Biswajit Mishra here. Hey, Biz.
Hi. Happy New Year,
it's
everybody.
great to see you. Yeah.
Oh, it's so nice to see you.
Yeah, good to see you all. And I don't know, I've not been writing much long poems to the prompt, but I just managed to get something in. I don't know if it's too long, but I do miss you guys. I mean, I communicate through Facebook, but back. I mean, I was slowly slithering in because I'm out of what you call that? I'm very disorganized in a way. I'm not out of submissions, and this very feels very intimidating to me now.
Aw, well, it shouldn't be intimidating from somebody posting the high quality haiku you are like pretty much
Okay.
every day.
Oh, but that's on my time. That's what I'm saying. So I would post anytime I'm sleeping and I wake up for the bathroom and something occurs, I can write and post it.
Now every time I see one, I'm going to be like, where was Biz when he posted this poem?
You have to be up though to like haiku book length. I mean, there's a lot of haiku.
Yeah, how many do you
here.
think you've written now?
I don't know, maybe 3,000-4,000. I don't know.
Yeah, it's time to like
It's
get
time
your
for the book.
best together and then get the book out. Probably with one of those great haiku presses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are so many of them could be trash. But yeah, I've written quite a few. But that's how it is, right? If you go free, then you can come up with something.
Yeah.
It's fun.
All right. Well, what did you do? And this is not haiku, but what did you do for this week?
Okay, no, not haiku. I wrote. It's called "Where Is That?" I just sent to you. I don't know. I mean, I just wrote it today.
Great.
I
Me
just
too
wanted
with
to show
mine.
my feet. So it's an excuse for me.
All right. Well, let's hear it.
Oh, we got it?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, where is that? Was that in my dad as I had a firm grip of the handlebars, mildly rough against my palms, with him holding the back carrier the first day of my bike that he bought, while my ass was rubbing hard against the seat, trying to reach the pedals on both sides at the same time. When I think of it, probably was with my mom when she carried me to the hospital with my cracked head. I was as tall as her, with her one hand pressing on the wound from which the blood streaked down my neck. Or was it with my friends amid smoke in our eyes when I learned how to smoke in college? Or maybe with my teachers, especially the two who taught me everything almost, I say now. Sometimes their praise and more times their strictures I must have carried heavy. It quite possibly be with my wife, particularly when we were newly married and I could feel the wispy aura of someone living beside me, the feel of our clothes side by side in the same box when we were leaving for honeymoon. Or it very well likely be when I held my daughter for the first time and was so scared with the lightness in my fingers that I gave her back to the nurse. Or was it when my son hugged me tight at the store when I bought him his first monster truck? Where was it that I lost the life I was supposed to leave as my own?
Yeah, really touching poem, Biz, and it is really great to see you again. We love having you on. Hope get back into the writing poems regularly. And
Definitely.
No, I do write there every day, but to write to the prompts is what and last touch.
I think you're up to the challenge, sir.
Thank you,
thank you.
But I will keep coming. I enjoy the community for definitely.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, thanks so much.
Yeah,
Biz.
wonderful to
Awesome.
see you.
Yeah.
Okay, good night. I'm going to jump onto YouTube.
Great.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
it was Biswajit Mishra for the first time in several months with "Where Is That?" Or more than that. It's been like a year.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
I think it's been well over a year.
Yeah.
I think it might have been. Anyway, too long in any case.
long.
Everyone agrees.
Okay, let's go next to Christiane Doucette.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Christiane, great to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm just pulling mine up over here to the side. Katie, you know how you are always telling us to try to bring our poetry to interesting places?
Mm-hmm.
I was at a protest on Saturday and they had an open mic and I read one of the prompt poems
Oh, wow.
here.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That I read here. It was the early elegy for American history that I read back like February of last year. Because no one had read any poetry and I just felt like
Oh, that's really wonderful.
we were there
Yeah.
because of a poet being killed, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So-
that's really wonderful that you thought to bring a poem there and really do it. It must have. I would have been nerve-wracked. I would have felt nerve-wracked too to like.
I
get up
didn't bring the poem with me to do. They just they said that there were going to be openings there, and I was like, I have it on my phone. Like I have all my poems on a Google Doc on my phone. So I pulled it up and screenshotted it so I could get to it quick. And I've had people reaching out to me, like even today, still a couple of days afterwards. So I'm really glad that I wrote that. I mean, I only wrote that poem because you guys had given me a prompt. So thank you.
Oh, and then it's so interesting too when it becomes like that you wrote a poem for a specific moment in the future is how it feels sometimes. And so to be able to share that then, that's really special. Thanks for telling us too.
Yeah. The poem that I have for tonight is called Taproot, and I'm going to go ahead and read it. I lost a tooth that day. I mean, the dentist bent into my mouth, metal tongs in hand, gripped a molar and twisted. I'd been numbed, but when the gum gave, it popped and ached like a young tree ripped up by the root ball. I tasted salt and iron, my cheek big with wadded cotton, the new gap enormous, big as a world, big as a lost wish. I faked a smile, tasting bile at the back, and Grandma drove me home to her house, where we'd been living since Mom grew too ill with baby to care for us. I turned the tooth over in my hand, jagged edges digging into my fingerprint, the center pulp still red, my old cavities exposed by light. The faster we arrived, the sooner I'd see the ultrasound, hear how my brother had heard our sister's heartbeat, hold that grainy shot in my hand, praying for no more hospital visits, no more IVs, no more blood poisoning and petrichie. Dad's van was in the driveway, and I rushed inside, a chipmunk ready to unpack its cheek. But the house was dark. My brother, a silent stone by the sofa where Mom lay, pale as a fallen birch. Her eyes a house uprooted, heartwood split open, and I, choking on cotton mouth, suddenly dry, knew what no one had yet said, that where there should have been a heartbeat, a whole world upended.
Oh. What a powerful ending, especially to that poem.
Thank you.
Thank you for
definitely.
sharing it.
Yeah, thanks, Christiana. It was Christiana Doucette with Taproot. Next, let's go to Carla Schwartz.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Carla, great to see you.
It's great to be here, and I thank you for everything you're doing. And I guess I have a dense-ish hyphen, so I will get to it. And that was such a moving poem. I'll just say it about Christiana's.
Yeah,
okay.
definitely
Yeah, it
was.
really was.
Amending. The first cast was a sandwich, a thin, scratchy layer of gauze over forearm, the meat, slid between two chalky layers of plaster of Paris, the bread, softened wet and hardened dry, all wrapped in a woven ace bandage, presented to me like a paper wrapper of a submarine you might buy at the shop. Only after they put it on me do they tell me I can't get it wet. So what can I do? No swimming, no hair washing with two hands, showers meant a plastic bag, bubble wrap, rubber banded around my hand and arm, sealed as best I could. I learned to tickle my armpit with my fingers of the good arm, contortions like the caricatures of gorillas you see in the zoo. Only 2 weeks, they say. Then the splint comes off and a cast goes on. Radial wrist bone. At night, I rest my forearm into a second pillow to keep it upright. I do my best on the indoor bicycle. Sometimes I fold my body over the handlebars and lean. If my weight against the handlebars strains my wrist, I let off. I don't know what to miss more, swimming or worrying about swimming, worrying what swimming will be like when I am finally allowed to with a waterproof cast. Still, I leave it all behind, drive myself to the office 2 weeks later, my splinted arm, a package hidden under my jacket sleeve. It's New Year's Eve. It's been slippery all week. Everybody in the waiting room has a wrist or an arm wrapped up or splinted. The doctor asks what color I want. After having lived with the grungy splint for 2 weeks, I think about how dirty the cast might get. I want something dark and choose purple. The splint I walked in with, they cut from me, dropped the unwanted into the trash. I walked out with the cast. When I swim, a stream of water passes through the cast, slowing me down, tickling bubbles, velvety on my arm. If I rub my cheek, it scratches. I can't wash my good arm without the thick sandpapery cast scraping skin. Pressing into my knuckles, it numbs my fingers. I practice cross-country skiing with one pole, gliding over slick snow like Nike. Every morning, I wake and ask my love, would you please, please take this off me? He smiles, kisses my fingertips, says yes, itching to grow. So I'll read that. Radial wrist bone, tickling bubbles, velvety on my arm, itching to grow.
Yeah, well, definitely. I remember the cast I had the one time, which was reminded of Colin, my son, had a cast not too long ago. Definitely relate to that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Carla. I hope you're healing as fast as possible.
Yeah, definitely.
I hope so. I hope so. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Carla. Yeah, that was Carla Schwartz with Amending. And next, let's go to Chelsea McClellan.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Chelsea. Great to see you.
Good to see you too, as always. I don't really know what to say about this poem, so I'll just read it.
Okay.
It's called Moving Day. This rubber mask he left behind last Halloween. Its lack of eyes and pliable head have been enshrined in my apartment, like some prize he won for me. Inside the wall, a hole had been there all along, a ring of crumbling brick. I stall. I puzzle back what might belong, but twist the rubber mask out, lift it high. Its face was friendly once, when his eyes flirted through its thrift as if its smirk, which now affronts the sensible as obvious, was not. I throw away the lie I bought.
Yeah, well, great last line there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that,
Thanks,
Chelsea.
Chelsea.
Yeah, it was Chelsea
Thanks, take care.
McClellan. Yeah, with Moving Day. And let's see. Next, let's go to Nivedita Karthik.
Hello.
Hey, Nivi.
Hi.
Great to see you.
How are you guys doing?
Good.
Good. So what do you have for us?
I have a small poem. I was recently at home with my mom in Chennai and I just flew back to Delhi. And on the way there at the airport, I saw this leather glove lying there. Considering it's winter, people here have started wearing it. And that was the abandoned object that I decided to frame my entire poem around.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah,
neat.
yeah.
Abandoned. A worn leather glove abandoned on the windowsill. Its edges frayed like the edges of a faded photograph. Faint traces of salt cling to the leather, grainy under my fingertips, rough and cool. The thumb has a small tear, a jagged scar, where someone's grip once held tight. Dust gathers in the creases, settling like memories, soft and silent on the once strong surface. I run my hand over the thumb's curve, feeling the roughness, the slight give beneath my touch. Left behind in the quiet, it waits, a tactile whisper of someone who once held it.
Yeah, definitely tactile details pulled into there. Thanks so much
I'm
for sharing.
sure
that, Nivi.
whoever lost that glove will be very honored and feel it was worth it.
Definitely.
So.
Maybe people are just leaving gloves all over just in case someone write a poem about it. What do you think?
That's what I'm
knowing the prompt lines were coming up. Yeah. It's just an epidemic of missing objects. Anyway.
Missing gloves, missing sock. A single sock, I should say, rather.
Thanks, Nibby.
Well, thanks, Nibby. Pleasure as always.
Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
Yep, have a good day.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Nibby Karthik with Abandoned. Next, let's go to Michelle Rosario.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
Michelle. Great to see you.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go right in and start reading the poem.
Okay.
The title is Larus. I wonder what became of Larus. He moved in when I was a kid. To me, he always looked old, chunky old Larus with his red suit, his name embossed in bright yellow letters, like he couldn't wait to introduce himself. He was not shy at all. He loved to share all his knowledge. He was an expert with words, but only in Espanol, which was fine by me because at that time, all I knew was Espanol. My mother gave him a raincoat to protect him, but it ran a little small and Larus developed a concave spine, which made him slouch a little bit, but he didn't mind. He always got support by his side when standing up for a long time. His skin was sun-kissed like mine. We even had freckles to match. We became so close, he let me tattoo my name on a hidden fold. His scent was soothing, a cologne I may now call archival letterpress, with notes of sandalwood, embers, and lampblack. I really like Larus. He made me feel smart. We could travel to any library in the world when I would hold him tight. I abandoned him, and I can't remember when that was. Was it when we ran away from home? There's so much you can fit in a plastic bag before you go. Was it when I left my country? My father told me to stick to English if I wanted to survive. I miss you, Larus. I miss when your voice and mine were one.
Yeah, well, great story. Thanks so much for sharing that, Michelle.
Thanks,
Thank
Michelle.
you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, that was Michelle Rosario with Larus. Next, let's go to Jared Campbell.
Hello.
Hey,
Jared.
Jared. Great to see you.
Good to see you. Mirror. An image left about 518 million years ago in the shale outside Kunming shows the first promise of a vertebrate body plan. A head, a tail, and a faintly indicated notochord. This is the dawning of the age of fish, centralizing interpretation into a brain that communicates with the body through one spinal cord. It embodies a picture of what it is to be alive. Linear thought, hierarchy, bilateral symmetry. How much of our eagerness to divide the world into light versus dark, hot versus cold, even versus odd, male versus female, is determined by our being built on a line against which everything is either right or left? What categories would we project on the world if we were creatures of radial rather than bilateral symmetry? Touch something made of cotton. Touch something made of wood. What does it feel like? How are they different? Imagine the electricity running from each of your fingers through your nerves up into your brain. Imagine your brain sending signals back through those same nerves to each finger, telling it how it felt, and that it felt the same as each other finger. Now imagine each finger has its own brain. How would it communicate with the other fingers? Would the cotton feel different to you? Would you feel different to you? What would you choose to feel next? These are pointless counterfactuals. Perhaps life could have taken many shapes, but history is linear. We are vertebrates. The image left in stone is when we turned onto a path that foreclosed all other possible paths. Look at this piece of stone. It is the dead image of Milo Kumingia. You are the living image. We left behind the left behind.
Yeah, really interesting poem, and Charlotte's new favorite word, vertebrate.
Oh yeah, she is.
She loves listing which animals are vertebrates and which are invertebrates.
She is. So.
That's her favorite.
It's a very bizarre word for a very bizarre concept.
It definitely is, yeah. And really fascinating. 518 million years ago for that. I wouldn't have guessed that the spine was that old.
They didn't think it was that long ago until they found these.
Yeah, that's really shocking to me. I would have guessed half that, you know?
I think I would have guessed orders of magnitude wrong, so I shouldn't have admitted that, but it's okay.
Well, very cool. Yeah, a lot of interesting insight in there. Thanks so much for sharing that, Jared.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Jared Campbell with a mirror.
Sometimes I wish we could like trace all the little factoids that enter, and then we arrive at the poem. We could have like a camera crew and follow Jared Campbell around and be like, this is the moment. Like, you know, like Slumdog Millionaire style.
Oh yeah, yeah.
There are some times when I wonder which is the more beautiful poem, the poem that is written in words, or the map of the Wikipedia rabbit hole, or the Wikipedia tree that eventually became the poem. Like, I feel like that's a poem in itself.
Well, some poets compete with themselves. Jared competes with his
Wikipedia search history. That's
very
funny.
Cool. Well, thanks, Jared.
Thanks, Jared. I kind of want to see his search history.
Yeah, really. It's Jared Campbell with a mirror.
Mine is really weird, too.
Let's go next to Amanda Harris.
All right, thanks, guys. So
Hey,
I just
Amanda.
want to clear this up before I read. From now on, you sent a submittable when you want to read?
Yeah, exactly. Yep, by the Sunday night. Mm-hmm. And then Katie will
'Cause
email everyone Monday morning with the link. Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I looked on the website and I didn't see a place to submit yet.
Yeah, it'll be there. But
It'll be opened up. We had to close it off so that I finished this month of submissions, but it'll be there. And then there will be on a new thing when you submit there will be a little box to check if you're available to read it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. In any case, the first thing I could think of was a childhood toy called Samuel. In my most delirious of delirious states, Sam introduced himself to me as a stuffed duck representing a duck who spoke English. As a result, I spoke to him often. His beak resembled something strange and crooked, and when I disobeyed my parents, I could look into his beak and see something that echoed my lack of morals. Sam was a listener. The blackest of black in his eye liked to shimmer when someone told a story, and as a result, I told stories often. Stories are born from the bones of the dying. Sam once told me as a child swiped him, reminding me he was a plush toy out of my hand.
Aww. Aww.
Yeah, very sweet. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Amanda.
Full confession,
Thanks, guys.
my childhood teddy bear is in our living room right now.
Aw.
It lives on Mrs. Bear
Aw.
with her torn quilt.
Yeah.
Or torn kilt, rather, not quilt.
Well, I believe Cooney's in my mom's attic, so
Oh,
she's probably
no! Rescue! No!
she's probably getting ready to mail it as we speak now that I mentioned
Oh, I
it.
really hope so.
Anyway, thanks so much, Amanda, for sharing that.
Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah, it's Amanda Harris with Samuel. That's sweet. Let's go next to Jeff Stempo.
Hi, Tim. Hi, Katie.
Hey, Jeff.
Great to see you.
First off, great interview with Jen.
Thanks.
And I am still working on that book where every single poem is in a different form. And I am definitely going to borrow The Disappearing Villanelle and The Beautiful Outlaw for some forthcoming poems.
Yeah, those are so cool.
Wow, finding two you haven't written is an accomplishment of itself. She should put that on the back of the cover.
Very brief poem that I have, so quick about the composition of it because that has to do with leaving behind too. I wrote the first draft of this brief little imagistic thing, and I liked the images, but there was no musicality to it whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought back to the other week where you were interviewing Manuel Iris, and I went, oh, okay, my Spanish has deprecated really poorly, but what if I try to translate this into Spanish and see how it sounds? And I did. I'm like, oh, this is better. And so I did the rest of the drafts of the poem in Spanish and then kicked out an English translation at the end.
Neat. Manuel would be thrilled to hear that. That's awesome.
That is, yeah.
Yeah.
So perhaps not successfully, because like I said, my Spanish is not good anymore. But perhaps I left English behind in the writing of the poem. So this is called El hambre es la buena, hunger is the good thing. El amor inocente, una mano encima de la cocina, la soledad, la ausencia del odor, el amor viejo, una cicatriz, piel en relieve. Young love, a hand on the stove, loneliness, the absence of burning, old love, the raised skin of a scar.
Very cool. Yeah, a Tonka-like poem.
Yeah,
too.
it is. Yeah, that's really interesting. Neat.
Yeah, thanks, I did find the Spanish very beautiful.
Yeah, it did sound very beautiful, I have to say. I feel so ashamed though too, because I lived in Mexico for 3 years and my Spanish is horrible, and it's like one of the most embarrassing things about me. So
if it makes you feel better, my first chapbook was bilingual, like literally bilingual.
Wow.
I could not write that book today.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Well, that's a very cool poem and great forms as always. Thanks for sharing that,
thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, it was Jeff Stumpo with El hambre es la buena, hunger is the good thing. Next, let's go to Laura Berg.
Hello.
Hi, Laura.
Oh, this is so wide-ranging of things left behind, but mine is an encore of Moving Day. Okay. Alrighty. So, defenestration. The movers even packed our garbage, singing toujours, wrapping flutes in butcher paper. As they yanked our love seat, 2 glasses broke. My husband resisted in his chair. I had to coax him away with an apéro. Huddled in a nearby bistro, we could see our upright protrude over a balcony. It wasn't that piano's first time. The job kept us moving. Pulses might speed, arguments flare behind goodbyes, yet we held hands, recalling how that piano was first levered up in snow to the 3rd story when we moved in, the joy of seeing fittings skywalk into Parisian flats. As we stared, our building seemed to recede, limestone facade aglow, proud as a senator in the late sun. We walked back home, and packing done, left keys on the counter. One last time, we rode the ornate iron lift. Though the building wouldn't miss us, as a taxi neared, I leaned cheek to stone and whispered, we lived here, as if hanging one of those plaques. In this house dwelled so-and-so. A new kid scootered by, crying, regarde-moi, maman. We move and move, yet nothing in us really wants to go.
Yeah, well, that's the voices that come into that too. Thanks so much for sharing that, Carla.
Thanks, Laura.
Or Laura.
Thanks. I'll go over to YouTube. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, that was Laura Berg with Defenestration. Let's see. Next, let's go to Leslie Ann Skechterson.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, great
Wait,
to see
I
you.
am really excited to read her books and try out some of those new forms.
Yeah, definitely. Those are some exciting ones.
Yeah. And so in this poem, yeah, boy, this didn't start out to be what it ended up being like that, which is, and it kind of just wrote itself, and then the Hyben verses sort of inserted themselves. So
yeah, always
I'll
fun when
read
that
it.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
It is so fun when that happens. Sometimes it's not really a journey you think you want to take, but you know what? That's why you got to do
it. Yeah.
Okay. Sanctuary. My granite rock melts. Sorry. Sanctuary. My granite rock meets the shore of a river just before it spills into a lake. White specks sparkle in the summer sun, just enough space for a child to sit cross-legged with no one else. My angry mother, her uncontrolled screams, only the woods. Coarse, jagged micro chunks of minerals imprint smooth skin, create dents, a lunar landscape of small craters, rough like my mom's pink file she uses to make her nails smooth. Wondering if her hands sting when they spank. Swollen welts numb on pointy pebbles, legs fall asleep, a million pinpricks when I try to stand up. So I decide to remain, maybe dip my toes in the cool, silky water, desensitized in the childhood I left behind.
Yeah, well, interplay between those is really interesting.
Yeah,
Thanks
really
for sharing
is.
that,
Thanks,
Leslie-Ann.
Leslie-Ann.
Thanks.
Yeah, Sanctuary by Leslie-Ann Skechterson. Now let's go to Stephen Croft.
Hey, Tim and Katie.
Hey,
Hey, Stephen, great to see you.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, I thought I was going far back in time until I heard Jared's poem.
It's hard to beat that.
Yeah.
If you went farther, I'd be like, how?
Mine's just yesterday, but it's an Indian mound in coastal Georgia near where I live. So this is Bilbo Mound, Savannah. They thought it ludicrous that any mound or pottery in Georgia could be many centuries older than those in Ohio and Illinois. The Bilbo Mound was over 3,000 years older than the oldest mound in Ohio. Richard L. Thornton, Appalachia Research. East of the city, south of the river, west of the sacred ocean, your patch of swampland remains, your cypress and Tupelo bottomland, an ancient, somehow remaining piece in the concrete, commercial, and neighborhood wattle fabric map of the urban city. What prayers, what dances with the words of what language did your medicine healers call out, waving turtle shell rattles to bless and preserve you for millennia? Your damp bog soil still not overrun by the tight wound modern city. Before woodland, before swift creek, before sand and grit tempered pottery, in the planted vegetable time of maygrass, knotweed, sunflower, before grand earth mound temples at Etowah, Ocmulgee, Kolomoki, your people walk to you, quiet footfalls to night rituals under the moon. People of ebb tide, flood tide, crow moon, loon moon, ebb tide, flood tide, people of deer, rabbit, alligator, and fish, oyster, clam, and mussels, who feasted under your trees at night, under the foraging bats, left spearheads and bones here. Still you remain in this small forest, bordered by this new country's oldest golf course, plotted out and played on by bored Scots in the 1700s. Old concrete pipes pumped the city's runoff to you in the 1800s, and today your hand-dug canoe canal going north to the river is very changed. Place of seasonal ritual, place of ancestor spirits. The new city has blessedly left you alone, but lined your canal with concrete to drain the whole city into a river of passing steel container ships, decks high with metal boxes. No one knows really what Bilbo Regional Storm Drainage Canal is named for. May we keep it that way forever. Forever leave you alone in your miraculous small woods with only songbirds and trees, morning sunshine in the dewy circles of spiders' webs and branches, cottonmouths, fish in brackish cross channels, and your ancient ghosts.
Well, really interesting poem or topic to be writing a poem about.
Yeah,
Bilbo
definitely.
Mound. Yeah. Thanks for sharing all that knowledge and insight too.
Yeah.
It's actually the oldest golf course is said to be in Savannah, but I think that there's competing one maybe in Philadelphia. It's one of those things where different people claim it, but I think there's a good chance that the oldest golf course is in Savannah, Georgia.
Well, I'd take an excuse to go to Savannah because I love Savannah.
Yeah, let's go.
I
Why
do.
not?
I
Yeah.
love it there. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, thanks so
Thank
much
you.
for sharing that,
Thank
Steve.
you.
That was Stephen Croft with Bilbo Mound, Savannah. Let's go next to Allison Versus.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, Alice. It's great to see you.
How are you? I'm fine. How about
Great.
you?
Yeah, good. I think your phone's sideways, though, so you got to turn it.
Okay.
There you go.
There we
yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Even better.
Yep.
Great.
Very cool. Yeah. So what do you have for us tonight?
So today I wrote a poem about my mom. She passed away when I was 2 years old. And you can imagine. So I didn't stay away from my style. Like I kept it. The trees, look, I wrote about the trees and using the trees expressions. The persons will refer to experiences, and leaves will refer to feelings in general. And then the lesson or the moral, it will be that we should let go of pain and take the lesson and take what's good and take the power. And here the tree will let go of the person who watered her and the person not the person, but its leaves in winter. Okay.
All right. Yeah. Let's hear it.
Great.
The poem is called Winter is Never Ending. I was a tree before I knew how to ask for water. She came quietly every morning, the way light comes, blue-eyed, smiling as if the world had never been heavy. Her hands were gentle, her voice left warmth in the air even after she was gone. She watered me without teaching me the word for thirst. Then one day, the water stopped. Not with noise, not with warning, just absence. The soil remembering her touch and missing it. I did not fall then, I only waited. But leaves cannot leave, only memory alone. They search for love, hope, care, patience, each one growing green, because I believed someone would return with water indeed. Each leaf was for a loved one, but each one was for a season. They stayed, they left, and one by one, my branches emptied. I thought something was wrong with me. I thought I was different because I grew without her shadow, until winter taught me otherwise. Winter stripped me clean, and the snow chose my branches, white, cold, and pure, decorating me without asking me to bloom. I learned that trees do not beg the sky, they deepen their roots. So I did. I let go of what I could not keep. I let go of the ache of searching. I let go of the belief that I needed to be watered. To be whole, I stayed bare, quiet, alive. It is how a tree survives, long enough to believe in summer again.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that.
I
Yeah.
remember sharing your story and everything too.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks,
Yeah.
Alice.
Thanks, Alice.
Yeah. So that was Allison Versus with Winter is Never Ending. And let's see, is that going to wrap up the prompt lines for tonight? It is. So thanks everybody for sharing poems as always. And so now let's see if we have some haiku to close out. Do you have a haiku for us, Katie?
I do.
Okay, did I put it in the document? I did.
We'll see.
Okay, let's see. Here we go.
All the snow that doesn't fall, patter pitter.
Patter pitter. That's great.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I don't know. I thought about all the things that go pitter patter, and then like, what if something went patter pitter and it doesn't happen? And then I was thinking, like, I understand we have it really easy here with it not actually being cold, but this is the time of year where I'm like, could it snow? And we actually did get snow last year once, and it was really fun.
We did. We got a dusting.
We got a dusting here outside of Houston. But yeah, so that's what I was thinking about. Although I know everyone's like, shut up, it's 50 degrees there and you're saying it's cold. But anyway.
Yeah, well, really fun poem. Yeah. And then so this happened a few nights ago, and I was thinking about this. Lying quietly so we don't wake each other.
Yeah,
we were like in bed for like an hour. We were both awake, and neither of us like moved.
And we didn't know that we were both like not moving to keep the other one asleep.
It is true. So yeah. So I don't know how to get around that though. So every time I'm awake now,
and I sleep with an eye mask too, so you can't even like.
There's not even that. And I tend to wake up like really early, so like a lot. And so I'm just like, is she awake? I don't know. So there we go. That is the haiku this week. Lying quietly so we don't wake each other. Anyway, that's going to wrap up the show this week. Now, remember the prompt lines is shifting format a bit, but we do have a prompt. We're looking forward to seeing what everybody comes up with. And the prompt is the following.
Write a poem that describes the taste of a surprising food as creatively as possible. So what I really am starting out by was saying creatively, like Jim was talking about this in this interview too. And then when he had our interview with Ruth Reichel, we talked about too, which is this idea that you don't want to just say food is delicious, right? And that's part of my thing with I wanted to be a good food writer because I figure you can write about food, you can write about anything. So we don't want to use words ideally like delicious or yummy, I guess has a little bit more flavor to it, but words like that. And I'm really interested to hear what surprising foods look like for everybody. So I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, good takeoff on a food prompt after a food poet. So really cool. All right. And next week's guest is going to be... Where does it go? You go like this. And then next week's guest is going to be Billy Collins. He is back. You probably remember he was going to be here about 6 weeks ago and was ill.
Yes,
pretty bad cold.
Yeah.
And couldn't make it, had to postpone. Well, the time is now. He's coming back January 19th to share his best-selling book, Dog Show. It's done really well all over the place. We saw copies at some random bookstores in London when we were there, which was really fun to see. Of course, Billy's always fun to hang out with, and his poems are always so accessible and enjoyable. So it should be a really fun episode.
Just don't use the word accessible while he's on.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
He hates that word.
Get it out of my system.
Poetic hospitality is what we call it on the poetry space.
Hospitable, welcoming.
He's hospitable, yes.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a lot of fun talking to Billy next week. That's Rattlecast number 326. Monday, January 19th, the regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you there. Hope you have a great week in the meantime. And don't forget to submit, of course, to the Rattle Chapek Prize. I should have mentioned that earlier in the show. But anyway, do that by Thursday night, too. And we'll see you then. Hope you have a great week. And we'll talk to you later. Goodbye.
Good night.